Live from the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm Kimberly Costabile, and I'm with a few folks from Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. Fairfax County is now 275 years old, but Mount Pleasant Baptist Church is having its own anniversary. How old is the church?
150 years.
150 years, wow. So this year, not only are we celebrating 275 years of Fairfax County, but there's a rich history in the Mount Pleasant area, what was the Mount Pleasant area, and is now the Lincolnia-Annandale area in Mason District. So tonight we're going to talk about a number of things, but I also have with me Marisa Williams, and it's trustee Bill Gordon. And Marisa did a film a little bit ago for the American History Film Project, and it's a history film on the history of Mount Pleasant. So, Marisa, how did you come up with that idea?
I came up with the idea of
the film.
The film. Somebody in my school, she asked me to do a film about my church and the history of my church, and I agreed with her because my mom, I knew she would like that too. And my mom, she said yes, and me, my niece, and my mom, we worked on it, and yeah.
Awesome. So, and Trustee Gordon, you were saying that the church, being its age, that you've got this great history going, and I think that what happened is that folks were talking about what is one of the oldest churches in the area, and how it's not only a religious institution, but you have a historical committee, and it's known as a historical landmark actually in the area.
Yeah, that is true. It's in the Mount Pleasant area, Mount Pleasant community, and it used to be Mount Pleasant. It was an enclave of like black residents within that area, and also near Bailey's Crossroads, which was another area down Old Columbia Pike. And that Mount Pleasant Baptist Church is no longer a quote community church because we've got people from all over Woodbridge, we've got people from Maryland, DC, all over now. So it's more or less a commuter church. It's not so much a village church any longer. But like I said, there's a lot of history at our church.
Marisa did a great overview of it, and we're going to roll to that film clip in just a moment. But she did a great overview of the history, and then tonight we'll be talking about a little bit more in detail, including some of the things related to the many decades at the church. So and then go ahead and let's see how the film looks.
My name is Marisa Grace. I am 10 years old. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some history of my church, Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. I am a member here at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, where Reverend Dr. Carl Johnson is the pastor. Mount Pleasant Baptist Church was founded by free slaves who traveled to Alexander seeking a new way of life. The good character of these free men impressed a wealthy landowner named Charles H. Brown. He sold them 60 acres of land on which to build their homes. Then he and his wife donated 1 acre of land to build a church, and the land was deeded on September 7, 1867, after the Civil War had ended. The church intentionally consisted a single pine log building. Their church is now 148 years old. How long have you been a member of Mount Pleasant Baptist Church?
I've been a member of Mount Pleasant Baptist Church for 60 years.
I understand your parents and even your grandparents were members of this church. How far back does your family go back here?
My grandparents actually were members here in the 1900s. This is at the turn of the century. And they were very active. My grandfather was a trustee here at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, as well as I have several cousins who were deacons and another cousin who was a trustee. So we had our family involved in Mount Pleasant.
Is this about the cemetery?
Yes, Marissa, this is actually a plot that goes back to 1909 that shows the layout of the cemetery. Basically, it shows there were 32 original families that had plots within what we call the Independent Association at Mount Pleasant. And it's laid out in 30 by 30 sections for each family. There are 32 families represented here. And you will probably recognize some of the names that are actually at Mount Pleasant now. The Summers, the Wheelers, the Terrells, the Jacksons. Again, some of these families are still active members in Mount Pleasant Baptist Church.
What is this?
This is one of the oldest tombstones in the cemetery. This is of Reverend John Pinkett. Reverend Pinkett was born in 1819 and he passed away in 1881. Remember, the church was founded in 1867, so he was the first minister. Reverend Pinkett's family was very prominent in real estate in the District of Columbia. They were the first minority realtors in the District of Columbia, so they were a very prominent family.
I thank you for talking to me about the history and the historic cemetery of the church and the cemetery. And thank you.
So what was it like working on that film?
It was fun, and I think it was a good experience for me. And I hopefully will in the future for me to do something bigger, and yeah. For me
Okay, great. And I think you were actually introduced to Trustee Gordon during that process.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it? Was it like to get to know him and interview him? And
It was fun interviewing him, and it was fun knowing things about him, and knowing things about him and how it was when he was growing up in the church, and how he was baptized in the church.
oh, so well. And so I'll ask you a little bit. How were you baptized in the church?
That's a good question. We have an old, what we call the chapel. Right now it's our nursery, but there used to be a pool, a baptismal pool in the nursery. So, and we used to baptize there. I was baptized there in that pool. But prior to that, we members of the church were actually baptized in a creek down in the Belly's Crossroads area. It was a creek that was offset from where the dam is in Belly's Crossroads. There was a creek that meandered down through the woods there, and the baptismal area was an offshoot of that. So it was like you kind of see in the old pictures of people baptizing in the creek. That's the way we were baptizing at Mount Pleasant.
Oh, wow, that's something. And I was going to say, and was the water warm or cold when you at least had to do it indoors? But
It was indoors. It was better than in the creek.
yeah, but that's something. We might see some drawings and photos of the old days because the church was founded in 1867.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
1867.
So yeah, so a long, long history. And so what did you find out in the process of the research? This another lady helped you with the research. Her name, was it Dolores, or what was her name?
Dorothy.
Again with a D. Doris? No, you can't remember her name.
No.
Either. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Well, anyway, she couldn't be here, but you have a history committee actually. So tell us a little bit about the history committee.
Yeah, well, we have a Black History Committee with an ongoing committee, and during Black History Month in February, they have a program each Sunday. So, you know, a heritage program, and you know, it's ongoing. You know, and they every periodically we have people come in and, you know, give talks and presentations. So yes, we do have a history committee.
Yeah, so from what I understand, the lady helped you research, gave you all the background material, and then after you had that, then you were able to pose the question to Trustee Gordon. And so what did you find out about the church that you didn't know before you did the research?
I didn't know that they helped homeless people, and I'm just finding out now that they were baptized in the creek, and where the nursery is, they had a tub where they were baptized, and I didn't know that, and I think it's very interesting.
Yeah. And then there were a few other things. I mean, in the 1860s, we're going to talk, the rest of the show, we're going to talk to some of the adults on the committee. And they're well versed in the many, many decades and nuances that it changed, because I believe it was a one room, it says log hewn, so handmade log building. But now it's a brick building.
Right.
But I think you were saying that you didn't know, that you thought the building that you were in since the 70s was the original building, but it's actually was a one room log home hand hewn building. And then so it went from a log building to maybe 3 different buildings over the years.
I think it was 4 different renovations during the years.
Yeah.
But the original church was built by the members of the church and by the people in the community. And you know, and like they were artisans. You know, you had carpenters and you got plumbers and just the whole 9 yards as far as the people that actually came together and built the original church there.
Yeah, that's something. And then what else? What were you expecting about the church, in the sense that you thought it was that brick building, and then you were surprised about that? And were you able to look at old photos of the church in the process?
Yeah, I was able to look at old photos and the history of how I was able to look at old photos.
Yeah, and we'll be seeing some of those old photos tonight. Some of them, as you saw in the video, were in a large book, but we'll be able to take a few of those out, make a slideshow, and we'll be seeing some of the photos in the past. We're going to go to a break. I would like Trustee Gordon to stay, and we'll talk about the history. And Marisa, thank you for being with us. And we'll see you a little bit more in June, when you'll be with the American History Film Project hopefully at the Angelica Theater.
Okay.
So we'll see you in just a little bit. And if you want to see more about Marisa, go to AmericanHistoryFilmProject.org.
And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs, or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfripp@aol.com.
Here, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America, and reading is...
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
We're here speaking with the elders from Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, and this is part of celebrating Fairfax County's 275th anniversary, and it's also the anniversary of the church. I have here with me Mrs. Bird, and tell me again, what is your first name?
Josephine.
Josephine Bird. So Josephine has been with us, been in the community since...
I was raised in the
You were
community.
raised in, okay. And your family has been here before that.
Yes.
So you're from the long lineage of folks. In Marissa's first version of her film, we'll see a clip of it because she made 2 versions of her film. And in the first version of the film, there's a scene of the grave sites, so you get an idea of the family names that have carried through. And many are still with the church today. And so it's also a little bit of the Annandale-Lincolnia area history. And so what's intriguing that we didn't get a chance to talk to, but we'll see that clip in a minute, is the deacon is in charge of that as a deacon, I guess. So tell us a little bit about how your connection with the graves and how you were able to help Marissa research the graves.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll tell.
Okay, and we can talk now if you
okay,
wish.
talk
Sure.
now. Yeah,
Sure.
well, I basically showed Marissa the, we talked about the older graves in the cemetery. One was Reverend Pinkett. Reverend Pinkett's tombstone was, he was born in 1819, and I think he died in 1881. And he was, I guess, maybe about the 6th minister at Mount Pleasant.
The 6th, okay.
Yes, and Reverend Pinkett, the significance was that his family ended up being in Washington, D.C., the first minority or black, the insurance and real estate realtors in the District of Columbia. So they were kind of like the pioneers in real estate in the District of Columbia, which was John P. Pinkett Agency. So that was kind of significant for us.
And the Birds family, how many generations of Birds are there?
4.
4 generations. Amazing. Okay. And so and you have some stories that you'll share a little bit later about your family. And we're just wondering, there was a film clip of the cemetery, and I was thinking that they might have that ready. But just let me know as soon as it's ready, and we can roll that clip. And if it's ready to go.
The cemetery has 2 parts. The Independence Cemetery, which is right here behind the Pinkett Shepherd Chapel, was also deeded in 1867. This is where the oldest graves are. The oldest headstones is at the Reverend Pinkett. The rest of the cemetery behind the church was deeded to Mount Pleasant on April 7, 1986 by the Golden Willow Oddfellows Lodge. The cemetery is still being used today and is the final resting place of a lot of current members.
When you steal away in your secret closet.
I thought we would show you how the graves looked and the various ages there. And so you can tell us a little bit more, but what's involved with keeping up with that historical area?
Well, the trustees at the church, the trustees really are responsible for maintaining the cemetery and the cemetery area. As Marissa said in the segment, Mount Pleasant has 2 sections of the cemetery. One is what we call the Oddfellows, which was deeded to us about 20 years ago from the Golden Willow Lodge. And because those members, right, they were dying out, and they decided to just go ahead and deed it to the church. and which a lot of our members actually are buried there in the lodge. The second part is the independent section, which like about the 32 original families are buried, have plots there, 30 by 30 plots, of which Ms. Bird's family, the Summers, originally there was Summers and the Wheelers and the Terrells. And a lot of those descendants are still at the Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. So, and there again, Ms. Bird is among the original descendants.
That's something, and you're living history because you're here to
Yes.
tell us.
Yes.
You're going to tell us some more stories about all of those years because they went and they passed on to you as oral history, and now I think there's an attempt to write it down and tape and interview people, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. But you're interviewing some of the elders in the church and writing things down, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So what is the oldest? What is the oldest tombstone in your cemetery again?
Probably, well, Reverend Pinkins is among the oldest. The oldest. We have some dated, in I guess 1870, 1880s. Yeah, some in 1880s, so that's pretty much about it in the cemetery.
So so what was it like when you were a kid compared to now? What was church like?
At that time, growing up in the community, it was something I would say we were protected because there was a black community. I went to a black church. I went to a black school. I was surrounded by stores where our family worked for some of the stores, and they all knew us, so it was a protected and that was growing up as a child. But as I've grown up and gotten older, I understand the difference between protecting as being in a black community, and now I'm surrounded with both races, so I'm fine with it. I understand it, and it means a lot to me, and that's why I'm in the community now. Right now, it's have all generations in there now. We have homes. They built their own homes there. We have schools that came in and built homes in there. So it's just a family affair.
So, and I think you were saying that you worked, and now I'm not going chronological like I should, but in the 80s you did a lot with affordable housing.
Yes, there was one of the deacons at our church, John Sidney Holland, was the first African American appointed to the Human Rights Commission, and it was at the Mason District, Supervisor Honorable Tom Davis, and he was instrumental in giving us 12 affordable homes, and I'm a homeowner of one of those houses now. And so he did a lot in the community, and it's just a blessing. It's a blessing.
Yeah, and so it sounds like you've been a part of how the community's grown and the development and redevelopment of it, and also, but it's actually been your nature to welcome folks. I know when I visited the church, I felt very welcome.
Yes,
and
it's a loving church, and everybody around there can tell you Mount Pleasant. I mean, it's just like I said, it's a family, Lake Barcroft, all around, Bayless Crossroad, Lincolnia. It's just a family that everybody knew everybody. And that what makes it so wonderful, because it's a loving church. And we have congregations, people coming in all the time, joining, telling how nice it is and whatnot,
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah. In the next segment, we'll be talking more about community history, but I remember that the church was deeded as a educational institution as well as a church, and so the thought was that it would bring literacy and bring some things, because it was only 1867, so it was pretty shortly after the Civil War.
Yes.
And so literacy was something, a new law, not only the Emancipation Proclamation, but there were new laws that allowed the encouragement of literacy. And so it was deeded as an educational institution as well. And so that became part of your mission. So not just a religious institution, but to educate. And so how did that, I know that you told me that's been weaved through the activities through the years, but how did you see that come about in many ways, the education thing?
Well, it was a big thing for me because I was able to go to school. I was able to go into some of the homes and, teach sewing to the younger children. I did that for about 3 years. I was able to go into the Fairfax County Public Schools in maintenance. I was the first black woman to retire from there. And so opportunities open up all around, yeah.
And we talked about that, and also as a child, you were saying you were instrumental in helping to integrate the schools later.
Yes.
And so we'll talk about that. We've got about 2 more minutes, so we're going to save some of that good stuff for the next segment. But that's just a little preview there that you've got a lot. You've been around in many types of activities in the community. So you've got education, housing, urban development, and as well as we'll be talking in our last segment about how you're going to educate the community and share your culture with this anniversary celebration. So it's an outreach to the greater community, and so that's something. Trustee Gordon, what's your job like, and what are your hopes for passing on what you do to the next generation?
Well, I've been on the trustee board now for about 30 years, and we're ready to pass it on to the next generation. But the trustee duty at Mount Pleasant, basically, trustees are in charge of the physical plant as well as all the administrative, the insurances, making sure that the building is insured. We're making sure that things get repaired at the church. So the trustees stay very, very busy. We also are responsible for the cemetery, which we talked about before, making sure that it's mowed and the maintenance is done on it, as well as the maintenance on the structure, the actual building. So trustees stay very active, very busy.
Good. Well, I know you know everything about everybody, and I'll be asking you maybe a little bit more later.
Okay.
But Mrs. Bird, if you can stay, we'll be right back in the next segment, talk a little bit more about Mrs. Bird.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped off money. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent. Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm Kimberly Costabile, and I'm here with two of the elder historians from Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. And we're talking about a little bit about African American history in Fairfax County, but also celebrating Fairfax's general anniversary of 275 years, as well as Mount Pleasant's unique anniversary, having been around since 1867. So, and so I have with me Mrs. Bird, and it's Josephine Bird, and Mrs. Washington. And Mrs. Washington, your first name is Julie, correct?
Julie, yes.
So Julie Washington. Now Julie is, she inherited much of the history from from her family, but it's actually through your in-laws. So tell us a little bit how they passed the church history down to you.
Well, basically, my mother-in-law had boxes and boxes of church history that she had retained over the years. So they sort of, when she passed, they got deposited at my house. So therefore, I've been working on those all this time and trying to go through them and sort out what needs to be done so we can do a longer range history book of Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, which is located in Alexandria, Virginia.
That's neat. And so, and what it is it's the Alexandria post office, but the Fairfax County Mason District in terms of political jurisdiction. And since now, and Inside Scoop technically is a political, cultural show, so sometimes we'll be getting into some politics here too, some of the questions. But I know that Mount Pleasant has been involved, it's been on the forefront of a social forefront, and individuals, even though the church itself can't be political, individuals have grown up in the community as being political leaders and social leaders for social change. And so, you know, so we're very excited to hear some of the many, many stories that come out of your church. And you were saying that you've been interviewing someone named Mary, who's 100 years old?
One of our members, Mary Lockett, just celebrated her 100th birthday. I was not able to attend that, but I have interviewed some other people at the church about me, and another person at the church have interviewed some other ones, and trying to find out where some of the places are located that the Mount Pleasant members were, like where is Sandy Fuller's? There was a place they baptized people. It wasn't down at Bailey's, in the Bailey's area. So we're trying to discover where those places were.
Yes, and yeah, I've heard that there are different areas where they traveled and throughout the times, and then we were talking on the phone about how you remember before Lake Barcroft was a lake, so and part of that expansion there. So there are so many different things that are changes. But what have you discovered in your research that you didn't know or that surprised you?
Basically, a lot of it was the buildings themselves. One thing we're trying to find out is just exactly what did the original church look like. I mean, we don't have any photos. I don't think the county has any photos. All we know that is when they built the wooden church, that some of the logs were retained inside the walls of the church. And on that same location, of course, is the brick church right now, which has been expanded to include a choir loft and everything. And then, of course, we have the sanctuary that we're in now. The brick building that we have is now called the Pinkett and Shepherd Memorial Club. Pinkett and Shepherd Memorial Chapel, named after two ministers at the church, Reverend John Pinkett and Reverend Milton Shepherd.
And you were also telling me some stories about that there was it might have been the Pastor Shepherd who was the horseback pastor, or a different one, and there was a pastor who would ride horseback between your congregation and another congregation.
I don't know. Josephine, do you have anything to add to that?
I do know they used to go to pick him up because he was pastor at Mount Pleasant Baptist and Warner.
Right.
And so I do remember they used to go pick him up on the horses and buggies.
And yeah, carriage ride. And so it's hard to imagine that it would be a long carriage ride between Lincolnia and Bailey's, a very long carriage ride back in that day. And then we were talking about the original neighborhoods. So someone was saying that the Landmark Mall area was originally Lincolnia stretched out to there, and you also had the your area was called Mount Pleasant, and so tell us a little bit about how that mapped out. Back in that day, and there's an area called the Village.
Yeah, it was called the Village. During the time that I started school, we was bused from Gum Spring. Gum Spring would come up to Mount Pleasant Community on the corner, would pick us up, and I would go to James Lee Elementary School. And from James Lee Elementary School, they would stop at Luther Jackson, because there was kids going there. And then from Luther Jackson, there was kids going to high school, which is in Manassas Regional High School.
Oh,
so
Manassas.
we had to bypass a lot of the schools to get to our school, and that was the route that we taken. And so it was fun because we were all black students and we all knew each other, and so it was a nice journey. It was a nice trip back and forwards. We had to wait till they pick up the kids from one school to pick us up to bring us back home. So we left early in the morning and just about dark when we got home at night.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and Trustee Gordon was talking about how I think he attended school in Old Town Alexandria. So they had to send him all the way there, and it was quite a long ride. But and he was able to he became trustee at the age of 22. So he was just that committed to being part of the church at a young age. But that was something, he'd seen many changes too. So, but you were instrumental in the integration efforts. So what was that like? Was it scary, or how old were you then?
Well, I wasn't scared because, like I said, in the community where I grew up, it was all black, and we were protected. We were surrounded by black. I went to a black school, I went to a black church, and even the homeowners that lived there worked on the farms, and so everybody knew us. So I wasn't afraid because we were protected from a lot. I knew about the March on Washington. I knew about all that, but still, they looked out for us all. Yeah. We had the mail truck didn't come to the village. We had to go up to the top of the road. The mailbox was all lined it up, and that's where we had to go get our mail at. We had the insurance man would come to the house, and we would collect insurance there. Doctors would come to the community. Cleaners would come to the community. So it was well protected.
And you were saying everybody came to you. The milkman came to you, and so it was a little bit different then.
He always would come to the house because we were the first ones that had a color TV.
It wasn't as
black and white, at that time.
Oh,
it wasn't,
sure.
It wasn't color, it was black and white. Everybody would come to our house to look at TV.
And then we're going to go through some slides, and that way you can tell me a little bit about what your parents told you and what your mother-in-law told you. But Mary's got some control on the clicker to look at the slides.
These were some of the first pastors. We can go through some of those.
Thank you, Julie.
Reverend Laws, basically, he lived in Washington, D.C., and he traveled by trolley, and then members would pick him up in Roslyn and bring him all the way up to the church in horse and buggy. Reverend Scott, Reverend Pryor, Reverend Payton, they weren't at Mount Pleasant that long of a period of time. And then we had John Pinkett. There was quite a few Pinketts in the church at the time. So John, and then I think there was another brother, and then you have a Reverend Milton Shepherd that stayed there, and he pastored, as we said earlier, 2 churches, Warner Baptist, and then he became just a pastor at Mount Pleasant. and then we went through Carroll, Baltimore. This slide here is something I picked up, and it's not Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, but it would be probably what it would look like in those early years in 1867. So that is not Mount Pleasant itself, but we wanted something to refer back to for historical records. So this is not really Mount Pleasant, but you can see that it's the hewn pine logs perhaps, and then we'll go on to, this is the old church with the wooden clapboards and everything and how it looked at that particular time.
So this is the actual here.
This is the actual church with probably a horse thing out there in front to tie the buggies to or whatever else.
Do you know about what year this might be?
This was probably, the brick church was built in 1933, so I would say 1920, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, before there were trees.
Yeah.
There.
So we don't have these are some of the first settlers, the Henshaws, and they were some of the first settlers here in 1867. There we have them working on, they'd be working on the wooden building right here at this particular point in time. As you can see, the women worked just as well as the men. Had to get that in there. And then after that, we have the Shepherd years coming on down. This is Reverend Milton Shepherd.
And you remember him?
His children still live in the area. He's a fantastic minister, just held everything. And not only that, he was outspoken in the Fairfax community in regards to segregation and integration in that matter. So he was very well versed in many things. This is the church, the other church that was built in 1933. And the back portion is what was extended in 1945. Okay? Now we have the Baltimore years, and that's 1972 to 1984. Do we want to take a break right now?
Oh, actually, we've got about one more minute left.
Okay,
and then we
this
can
is
go to
Reverend
the
Carroll
next
A. Baltimore. He was with us for quite a few years. In fact, when we built the new sanctuary, the fourth sanctuary, when we moved in, we had almost had a mortgage burning. The church was paid for in full. Okay,
exciting.
so there we have the mortgage burning right
in
there.
83.
In a little bit of time.
Good.
It's nothing at
And we're
all.
going to come back for that
Okay.
and talk about that a little bit more.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit ASHA.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your hosts.
Thank you. We're back. And I just thank you that we've got in the hot seat tonight. It's going to be Deacon Stark from Mount Pleasant Baptist, yes. and then we're also back with our friend Julie, who was doing a slideshow with us a little bit earlier.
Wonderful.
But Deacon, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having us.
And you're organizing the anniversary celebration of it at the church.
That is correct.
And and also the community outreach and how this ties in with Fairfax County history at large.
That is correct.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I thought that we'd have you here together. Julie was just showing us some of the slides that she inherited from her in-laws and that have been part of the church collection. And I wanted to sit with you and we'll just all chime in as Julie's talking a little bit more. So if you want to continue with where you were going with the church history.
Wonderful.
And then we'll be talking a little bit more about the future and your future plans.
Okay, great.
Great.
Okay, so after Reverend Baltimore, we had Clary Brown, and he was there for a short period of time. And then, of course, we had Harry J. Pilson as our pastor, and he served quite a few years. Now, our current pastor is Reverend Carl M. Johnson, and this is a picture of him and the First Lady Robin Johnson, and their family, of course. And this is our crest that we have at the church, and the moving forward with God is our theme for this year. Okay. I think that's about it on this particular slideshow. Right. We do have some other photos that we had of the 100th anniversary program that was done.
Maybe the crew can let me know when that comes up.
Okay.
Oh, I see there's a few in the back of me.
Okay, this is Reverend Milton Shepherd. This is in what we now call the Pinkett and Shepherd Memorial Chapel. And these were our, quote, trustees back then. And we really admired them, but they are all long since gone. And this was taken like in 1967. So this was celebrating the 100th year. So if we have a couple more, we can show those and see what that church is like during that particular time frame.
1967.
1967. Now these were the deacons at that time. Of course, we didn't have that many today. I think we have, how many deacons, Starks?
We have about 15 deacons
15
today.
15 deacons at this particular point
those
in time.
are the men that I'm following,
yes.
which are some.
Yes,
yeah.
and they're doing quite a good job there.
Absolutely.
Okay, next photo, please. And this is the church school staff. The young lady in the back, which is right next to Reverend Shepherd, she's still our superintendent of Sunday school. And one of the older members beside her almost is Barbara Daggs. She's also quite knowledgeable of events in Mount Pleasant. She's 80. She's in her 80s now. I won't tell her how old she is. But
do we see Bill in there anywhere? Bill Gordon, is he?
Bill when he was
Bill
kid?
Gordon,
is he
I
one of the
think
kids?
He said he was one of the kids there. Yeah. And he was trying to calculate how old he was at that particular point in time.
Absolutely.
But we thought these would be interesting to show, show some of the history and the changes in people over the years.
Right.
I think there's one. These are the deaconesses. They have since long gone, and there we again have 6. And I think we probably have about 12 or 13 of them
Absolutely,
now
yes.
at the moment. And this is the congregation. As you can see, the church is packed during this particular thing. The ushers are standing here in the back.
At their 100.
And things have changed there. We now have stained glass windows, and we have a beautiful stained glass in the back. That was done by one of the members, but that's not the current stuff. So we'll have to come back to update you on everything that we've done.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Something, yeah.
And there's some more.
Yeah, and we'd love to send a camera crew to interview you personally and maybe come to a service or come to interview some folks. Mary, who's 100 and couldn't be here but is watching. So that's why I was like, hi, Mary.
Yeah, she just celebrated that over the weekend, I believe it was.
So we'll just like, Mary, you can't be here, but we're going to come get you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and so definitely. And so this is only the first part. And so, because your anniversary celebration is in September.
That is correct.
So we'll be doing a little bit between now and September. And Fairfax's anniversary celebration, I believe, is 17th of June.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we'll be talking a little bit more between now and June, and we'll be talking about different communities because right now you're in Mason District, but of course there's a lot of Providence District history and a lot of Franconia area history. So, so we hope to touch upon all of the districts in Fairfax County and a little bit of more of Alexandria and Arlington, but there's so much to cover, and so just in your area, and also and of course now that your church is an influence in DC as well. You have DC residents and a lot of leadership. So I want to touch upon how the leaders that have come up through the ranks in your church, and also some of the leaders that were strong in the community and part of the 60s civil rights movement. So if you might want to.
Well, as Julie has shown on some of the photos that she presented, one of our key deacons that was instrumental in the civil rights movement was Deacon Sidney Holland. And Deacon Holland, again, a man that I was able to serve under, and he lived to be well into his 80s and 90s. But again, he was very instrumental in getting blacks integrated into the school systems within Fairfax County. Like Mrs. Bird talked about the housing, getting affordable housing for black citizens in that area. He was very instrumental in that. He was also very instrumental in the NAACP and getting, making sure that we as African Americans and black citizens within Mount Pleasant and in the community go out to vote, because that's where the power starts, is when we register and go out to vote. So he was very instrumental in getting us out to vote, registering to vote, and just all about making sure that we exercise that right as black citizens. So again, I had the pleasure of serving under him as a deacon, but also watching him as a citizen of the people, because he was really one that really cared about advancing black citizens in the community and also in the church. So you just could not protest, be a protester if you hadn't registered to vote or cast your vote, because Deacon Holland was adamant about us getting out and registering and voting. So yes, I have to follow leaders like that. So.
And so what inspired you? You grew up in this church as well, or?
I did not. I'm a sort of transplant. I've been in Mount Pleasant now for about 25 years, but when I came to the community, I think Mrs. Bird talked about it and Bill talked about that when we came to Mount Pleasant, it was just the warmth of the people, the fellowship of the people, and the whole congregation. So we just fell in love with the church and the people there. And then, like I said, you saw some of the strong leaders within the church. I just mentioned Deacon Holland, but I can go to Trustee Robinson, Trustee Sid, there's so many men that were on the trustee board, the deacon board, and ministers there that sort of helped influence me and my spiritual walk, also political walk as well. So, but it just a wealth of knowledge right there within the church family.
And what is it that I would say? There were times of courage. I'd walked into a sermon about a year and a half ago, but it was during African American History Month last year, and it was either a visiting pastor or your pastor was talking about. He was putting it in spiritual terms, in terms of always feeling spiritually protected. But he was saying, God is better than any alarm system, kind of thing. But he was saying that there was a time that he was in very real fear, for him and his family. And I don't know if he was speaking out at that time or if it was just the way it was, but he was just saying there's a time that he wanted to, lock the windows and doors, and then, all he could do is pray.
Right.
And so, And so, you know, I didn't know, and so you've heard some inspirational talks just last week. So how, you know, what have you heard that?
Well, I think as we go back through the history of Mount Pleasant itself, the 150 years that we've been established, or the church has been established, and seeing those men and women that came up that was free, they had just received their freedom, to come up out of slavery, to establish something. You're leaving a place that you don't know about, or you knew about, that the harsh labor, coming up to an area that, you know, that gives you hope and opportunity, and establish a community that you can live in and grow in, and educate your children. I think we talked about being the ability to read and to write, to learn, to have that opportunity, and then growing up in a community during the Jim Crow era, during segregation, during the Civil Rights era. Again, that community, the black church, was where we all, I think Sister Bird talked about, you felt a safety because you had family. Even though segregation was a law to keep us separate, it kept us close together. And you have that warmth of family, even though you had the noise and the chatter around, the threats, you still was close. You felt safe because you were family. Not only in the church, but also your surrounding neighborhood and family. So.
And they were saying the land was deeded such that that's why people came here from other areas, because this was a safe haven and a haven for education.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
And we hope to be talking about this a little bit more. There's so much to talk about, and we only have a minute left.
Absolutely.
But so tell me in a minute or so, what are the what's on your calendar? What should people keep on their calendar to
the anniversary celebration, of course, is in September. One of the things that we're really excited about, Fairfax County Historical Commission just approved Mount Pleasant with a historical marker. So we'll be having a ceremony. It takes about 12 to 8 weeks before we get that marker out. So we'll have a celebration for that as well.
And we're going to come back with pictures of that. Not today, of course, but we will come back in a few weeks, maybe in March or so.
Yes.
And with an update. And thank you so much for being with me here today.
You're welcome.
You've inspired me, and you've given me ideas for other things to research and write about. And
Wonderful.
I really appreciate you coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you. Good night. Thank you for being with us. This has been good. Thank you.